There's a very dynamic threat landscape, right? Malware authors and cyber threat actors, they don't sleep. What I really like about computers is that there's no randomness, right? It's like you have an input and you get an output. It's predictable. And think about the sandbox. You have a piece of malware. If you can detonate it and blow it up in the sandbox and see what it does, you're successful for that piece of malware. Something that's carried through my entire life. I like to take things apart and really understand how they work. So it's, how does this thing work? Why was it implemented? And how can I maybe change the product even to make it more useful? If you build a product in cybersecurity, it works the first day, and then there's a new trend, a new trick, a new malware, and it breaks it again. It just keeps breaking and breaking and breaking. You live this cat and mouse game. You just have to stand up over and over and over again and just keep working on it. What you ultimately try to do is try to build something that can last. So my dad gave me an Apple computer, and that's where I basically started playing some games. He brought me the first C programming language book when I was 13, and I did a lot of low-level programming back then, so I really got familiar with, CPU architecture and these kind of things, at least what I could understand at the time. And that really went on and carried me to decide to study computer science at the University of Rostock. My diploma thesis was about clustering malware, converting the code into like a meta code to like fingerprint certain binaries, even if they changed over their lifetime. What really got me into this whole theme of my diploma thesis, where I eventually started looking at code data differentiation, how can I identify certain structures of code and dynamically look up offsets for structure members, that really came through these game modifications that I was working on, because the company was changing their code so frequently that I would have to manually reverse engineer all the offsets again, and through building automation and algorithms that could, dynamically look up these data structures, I was able to, really adapt and create a more powerful, self-updating game mod that I could then ship out to my user base. I built this game modification. I was selling it for, I think, like $20 a piece, a license. I'm making a lot of money for a student, right? I'm having a great student life. And then the doorbell rings, and there's this guy, it's like a private investigator standing at the door, and he says, "You know what you've done." And I didn't really know what I did. I was just, doing what I loved. And then he basically threatened to throw me out of university. And then the gaming company came in with their lawyers, and they threatened to, sue me. And I kind of realized it's not a hobby, it's not fun, and it's like there's a real company and revenue behind what I'm doing. And that was like a pivotal moment for me to understand I need to focus on being on the good side of things. It was after I had my diploma and started working for a startup in Basel, which was Joe Security. We were in like a little business park in Basel, just a couple people. It wasn't a big company, it was self-funded. I remember talking to the founder and telling him about my diploma thesis and how I think we could integrate it into his overall dynamic analysis sandbox structure. That was when I then learned, there's this other world. There's sandboxing, there's malware. We can kind of use that generic framework that I built to create a better product. A sandbox is a isolated virtual environment typically, where I can start out with a clean state of the machine. So it's like a lab, right? And then I put a program or a document or whatever, a script onto that machine, and then I start running that and monitor all the behaviors. And then I capture all that data, and then I try to make sense of it. So I try to convert it into triggers that basically tell me what would happen if I would run that file on my actual machine. Typically, the virtual machine is going to differ in some way, and that's not scalable. That doesn't happen. There's no sandbox vendor that really offers such a solution. I think combining static and dynamic analysis was really like a joint idea between Stefan Bühlmann and myself, and we coined it hybrid code analysis, and that's the name that's still being used today. The energy of a startup is really a lot more fast-paced, and you don't have as many rules that you have to live by. Working at Joe really was an eye-opener in terms of how much freedom and flexibility you have when you're a startup. You breathe and live the product and the technology, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be a success. There's no guarantee that you're going to sell it to a customer. You're always on the edge. But ultimately, I was like moving along a roadmap, and I wanted to be like my own entrepreneurial spirit. So that's when I decided I think I could build something similar, maybe even better in parts. And so I think it's just time to found my own company. Founding Payload Security was really driven by the fact that I wanted to also have my own sandbox, first of all, and I also want to have a community site to engage with the community. Hybridanalysis.com back then was one of two communities. We had the Cuckoo Sandbox open source community, we had hybridanalysis.com. So there weren't a lot of places for people to upload malware and also share the samples with their friends. The underlying architecture was always very open. I didn't mind being out there, I didn't mind being tested. It was a mix of building resiliency, building a robust solution, being exposed to in the wild malware, the latest threats. It gave me like an adrenaline rush almost, to be honest. Like if I saw a new piece of malware that wasn't working, and I already saw the solution in my head, I knew what to do, I would push the code changes to the developers or do it myself. I would do nothing else but work on updating the software, pushing it out, so I knew I would be first. I'd get all the retweets, I'd get the community looking at my report, so that was what kept me going. We had a lot of SOC analysts, researchers, cybersecurity enthusiasts that were using the service, and they would put a malware sample into our service and it would work, but it wouldn't work on their 10 times more expensive enterprise product that they had sitting. And then what they would do is they'd basically shoot me an email and ask me like, could you like do a tech demo to my manager, and then we could learn about your product, the enterprise features that you have, and so on. Once the management saw that the team loved the product and the technology and the pricing wasn't crazy, they would just ask, where can I swipe my credit card? We were a small, thriving business, and I think it took about like 18 to 24 months to really go from 0 to 1 million in annual recurring revenue. This is like a serious business. There's actual contracts with big companies and big names that expect something back in return. The responsibilities suddenly grew much larger than like, I'm just out here for fun and it's my hobby, and it was growing into something bigger, right? And I think that's the point where I either had to pivot and take on a lot more professional help or join a bigger company that was just growing very, very fast. That's really when we sold the business to CrowdStrike.
Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike.
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 It's like a life-changing moment, right? It was really having access to a lot more resources, doubling down on that vision, creating something much more scalable and powerful within that ecosystem that made me want to work together with them. I think the Sandbox, as it lived within the CrowdStrike platform and ecosystem, it still got better gradually, but essentially the core of the Sandbox was still the same, right? We were just at the one point trying to build a more mature enterprise product, but then on the other hand also double down on the community and really scale up the infrastructure behind the community so we could process ultimately not 1,000 files a day, but like 1 million. So we really wanted to move the needle by like 100x to get to a much, much larger scale. And that's where we noticed there are some scalability issues with traditional sandbox systems. It requires a massive investment in infrastructure, whether it's physical machines in a rack or VMs in the cloud. That really was an interesting time. I was again a smaller cog in a larger organization. They were growing very fast. Eventually, like after about 1.5 years, I felt it's time for me to, re-engage with my, my inner drive for being in a startup, being in control, and innovating and growing something that I fully own and have passion for. I really wanted that feeling of being, a bootstrapped startup, a small business owner again. So that's why I left. So I'm sitting at home, right? It's COVID. I'm thinking about how we implemented the previous technology, what issues we ran into, specifically really highly evasive malware, where you couldn't predict the condition of what had to be served in the environment to really detonate it, but also the scalability issue. Just maintaining this cluster is extremely extremely frustrating and introduces a lot of other problems. So I'm sitting at home, right? I'm thinking about all these issues we had, and I remember emulation, right? Emulation has been around forever. Like antivirus engines have used emulation to unpack executables in the 80s and the 90s. There's a revival of emulation, but no one has really taken it to the first stage. So that kind of was this aha moment where, while I was sitting at home, I kind of realized we need to rethink how we do sandboxing and go closer to the instruction level and drop the notion of having, farms of virtual machines that need to be maintained. And October 2020, in the middle of COVID, I decided enough of all these ideas, I need to put it to reality, and I founded FileScan. A lot of customers, if they think about sandboxing, they want that mass processing sandbox, the real-time sandbox. They want the speed, they want the resource efficiency, be it in the cloud or be it air-gapped, be it on-prem, it does not matter. And I think emulation-based sandboxes, they're a perfect fit. I knew there was a better way to traditional sandboxing, which faces all these scalability and cost and evasion issues. And I found that emulation, specifically of the stage 1 malware, was really a good approach to get to that scale, bring it to the cloud, get closer to the instruction level, and really, bypass automatically these evasion checks. And yeah, that's the gist of FileScan. So as we founded FileScan, we got a government grant for high-tech, innovative startups, which really helped get to the MVP. We hired a couple contractors again, so I followed the same blueprint, I'd say, that I followed with Payload. And then I just executed much quicker on my vision because I had a lot more experience this time around. So we're working on the emulators, right? We're still trying to get to that 100% success ratio, and the government grant money is running out. There was multiple people at OPSWAT sitting at the sidelines and really seeing how the MVP was developing, and as soon as they saw that he's on to something, right? It's working.
One could say there's two beginnings to our journey with FileScan and the acquisition of it. The immediate catalyst was in 2022. We were looking to offer sandboxing functionality in our platform. So I did a search of smaller companies that had this capability and reported my findings up to the leadership. One of the companies I discovered was FileScan.io, run by Jan Miller.
When Tom brought up the FileScan.io to the executive team and basically say, hey, I found a very nice fit for the OPSWAT portfolio. What do you think about it? My first reaction was obviously, wow, that's amazing. It is truly an effective and efficient solution that requires very little resource to operate and extremely fast, and is not based on any legacy heavy architecture.
At that point in time, Benny reaches out and says, from OPSWAT, right, CEO of OPSWAT, I believe in your vision, we have the funding, we got a big team, we can, double down on the community and really grow this into what you believe is the next evolutionary step of sandboxing.
Jan is a bright, smart, hardworking individual. So if you're looking at throughout his whole career, he initially built a sandbox. After that, found his own company. Jan rethink how can a sandbox can be done in a completely different approach, better and faster. So the guy is a true sandbox and malware analysis expert.
So Benny asked me to fly out for dinner. I fly out.
When I first met Jan, we immediately hit it off. We, two entrepreneurs sitting down for dinner. He bootstrapped a company, I bootstrapped a company. So obviously we had several things to talk about.
We quickly felt that we were in sync with the vision.
Once we realized that Jan is on a better path for perfecting the sandbox, that was a big aha moment for us, that we're willing to dump our old way of thinking and move to the Jan approach of emulation-based technology. And that was a pivotal moment for us.
I think what's great about Benny is that he's bootstrapped this company, so he has all his passion invested in the company, the technology, the people, and he's also very technical, right? I mean, I can talk to him about emulation, traditional sandbox, he gets it. So he believes in innovation, he believes in, empowering people to follow their vision and their dreams as well. So, I mean, it was a perfect fit for me. He made me a great offer and I just couldn't resist. Under the hood, it's really, first of all, patent pending, it's brand new. We manipulate the control flow, right? So because the emulators are so close to the instruction level, it kind of allows us to pathfind the right way So we always can detonate the sample. So I think what it really does is, and it's an overlooked thing, for really, really highly evasive targeted attacks, we can still get them to detonate. So if you're like under attack from, the Chinese or the Russians, and there's this one sample that will fail with all the other products, it will still detonate with our sandbox.
We decided to take this approach, acquire FileScan.io, bring Jan into the OPSWAT family.
Jan's approach really fits sort of the overall MetaDefender story around file security, which is being able to process files at scale.
Bringing the FileScan.io technology, bring that sandbox technology part of our portfolio to have a lightweight, fast sandbox that we can actually go and emulate those scripts that we're removing, emulate the objects we're removing, emulate the hyperlinks, and get everything in line. That's why it made such a perfect fit.
We are here to create solutions for customers that is light, that is fast, but that has to be effective. And the FileScan.io checked all the boxes, and they come with an extremely novel sandbox idea that is nothing like the traditional ones, nothing like the legacy ones.
What we were missing all the time is how we detect something but nobody knows about it. Nobody knew about it before. So we figured out that it would be great to have a sandbox as part of the MetaDefender kiosk. The beauty of the FileScan.io would be the fact that it is capable to run inline. The entire processing speed of one file is measured in seconds, so we can put it on every file that we're actually trying to analyze. When we're doing that, we give the customer the highest amount of security, both from zero-day, from unknown malwares, from unknown exploits, in one single solution.
When we have the FileScan integrated inside the MetaDefender platform and being adopted by managed file transfer, this is one of the most unique capability that's integrated to a productivity-based solutions that was never been built in such a way, and we can offer this very innovative approach for the customers to not bypass security requirements.
When you have those incidents that are coming up of, hey, we have to analyze the threats that are being detected, it's just 10 times faster for them to be able to send it into our sandbox and utilize it versus waiting on that virtual environment with traditional sandbox to run through everything and utilize it. So from our perspective, we're saving them the cost of doing the time of being able to analyze those threats and get those results immediately.
So the reaction after a POC or during a POC is customers are surprised how much information they get back from the reporting and how in-depth the actual analysis is. It also gives them some kind of information that backs up either some analysis they're doing or shows some deeper analysis without removing their current solution.
So this is extremely exciting, and this is something that's so complementary to the capability we have right now by having the FileScan as a backend.
In the future, I see Sandbox growing to analyze way more file types. So if we are limited to several dozens or several hundreds right now, we'll be able to go to thousands of different file types. If we're limited to several operating systems right now, we'll be able to go and analyze that for way more operating systems in the future. And all of that we'll be able to do in a faster way, in a way more scalable way, and we'll be able to go and analyze it. I use AI models to go and take all of this analysis of all of these files to further enhance the detection of the MetaDefender platform.
So at the end of the day, it's a cat and mouse game, right? We need to always react to the new threat, the new attack vector that we see in the wild. And using machine learning and sandboxing at scale allows us to react a lot quicker. And speed is the essence of the game, right? You need to be fast, you need to react, you need to see the threats coming, and then you're going to be much more resilient as a company. What we can do next is generate a lot of high-value data and then fingerprint that data and use machine learning to search through that data and organize it and cluster it and ultimately understand new threats and also explain why that's a new threat. So that's the future.
We're always investing in the future and also keeping pushing ourselves to the latest technology in all of the MetaDefender stack. So we keep questioning ourselves whether it's a sandbox, whether it's CDR, whether it's the multi-scanning. We're always trying to stay one step ahead of any threat.
So it's a journey. I'm definitely not done with this journey, and I'm really looking to see what is the next evolutionary step going to be, and just breathe the air of entrepreneurship at OPSWAT that they allow me to breathe and work with great people. So that's what I'm looking forward to.